Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So if you spent any time in mid-Michigan, you're likely familiar with the Eyde family name and the many redevelopment projects, buildings they own, they operate and invest in. You also may know that we lost the patriarch George F Eyde in 2017. Here to discuss the new generation of the Eydes at the helm and what their focus is these days is the Principle of Eyde Development. Mr. Nathaniel Eyde, welcome to the show, Nathaniel.
Chris, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So your father and his brothers were quite the movers and shakers in their day. You know, how did the Eyde family get started in real estate development?
My mom, my dad's mom, my grandma Eyde, bought some land for a dress shop. Huh. Have I ever told you this story?
I don't know the story. No.
It started with that.
Okay.
There are a bunch of Eyde brothers, right?
Yep.
So that's the idea: is these men who did real estate, and grew it and did their thing. What most people don't know is our family is matriarchal.
Okay.
It's Grandma Eyde.
Huh.
It's founded on strong women. This is new, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Grandma Eyde. She was all of 5 feet 2 inches tall.
Yep.
My dad would tell stories all the time about how Grandma Eyde, he would say in his voice, you're going to recognize this voice, she was a leading seller at J.L. Hudson's in downtown Detroit. She came to the country from Damascus, Syria, and my grandpa Eyde is from the mountainous regions in Lebanon.
Okay.
But her thing was coming from her business experience of sales at Hudson's in Detroit. She wanted to open a dress shop after moving to Lansing with my dad to start a family. She bought a piece of land, found out later it was not zoned for commercial, and she wasn't going to be able to get her shop built on it. She then, I believe, I hope I have this right, she then sold it as opposed to building on it.
Okay.
Sold it at a significant profit, and that's what planted the seed in her mind that would be a good business for her sons, for her whole bunch of sons to go into. And they did.
Huh.
That's how they got started.
How about that? Did she ever get her dress shop?
She never got her dress
really
shop.
Just went real estate all the way through.
And that ties into what my dad, George, and his brothers, Lou, Sam, Patrick, and Michael were all into is that what ties into my grandpa is all he wanted to do was be a farmer. That was he came over and that was the sign of status, was livestock and
right.
land. And what that dropped down to is the sons who bought land. So his dreams, my grandpa's dreams were to, the way that they were realized was maybe a 10 by 10 plot in the backyard that was fenced off where he would raise chickens and raise vegetables. The way that dream was realized is those sons bought land. They didn't farm it quite as much.
Right. Right. That wasn't where the money was.
And planted a lot of trees, though.
Okay.
A lot of trees. One of my Uncle Lou's favorite things to say was how many millions of trees they planted versus buildings that they built.
Got it. Okay, so I was one generation off. So your grandparents started these shenanigans, but your father George and his brothers, mashed the gas pedal and really kind of pushed things. And
what they did is they started with single family homes. They figured out how to build a house, and it was DIY. Then the next thing was, well, maybe we can buy a piece of land and put in curbs and gutters and figure out how to do a subdivision. That was the next thing.
Okay.
Then the next thing was, well, maybe we can do this in multifamily. We can do this with apartments. Then it was, oh, you know what? Why don't we try and do this with an office building?
Right.
And so it changed in the product types from residential to commercial, from true mom and pop to what we are today, which is still a mom and pop shop, still a small business.
Yep.
But with some institutional earmarks to it.
Right. So your assets now, obviously, if you're building a subdivision, you sell them and then you're out, right? So right now you have a decent blend of kind of office, what we call kind of retail storefronts, and multifamily.
We're in three businesses.
Okay.
We're in the business of development, which is that, when you're in real estate, you're in one of these three anyway. You're in development, which means you build things from the ground up, or in our case, most recently, it's redevelopment.
Right.
We take things that exist as maybe a former department store and turn it into a mixed-use building with some residential and things like that. So that's development. The second business we're in is property management. Well, if you have anything, if you own a house, you're in property management because you're running that house.
My wife's our property manager.
That's right. That's right. And
I'm the labor.
That's the most. You know what? That's the most important part.
Right. Well, yeah, need the brains first, but yeah.
I've watched that. I've watched the last 2 years of what our property management and our facilities maintenance team, the people who worked, the people who never were work from home, they came out every day. So property management, facilities management, that's our second umbrella, so to speak. And the third one is real estate investment. That means just buy and sell buildings.
Got it.
That's that plus brokerage, which isn't as much as what we do. Those four things are what the real estate business is, which you know quite well.
Right. Yep. Dabbled in it for a little while for sure. So there really isn't a wheelhouse. I mean, it's all of those things, right?
You have different things that you prefer. Some people love, we're in a family operated business, which means you do everything.
Yep.
A good example of it is, I don't know if you've been to the Dunkin' Donuts on Okemos and 96.
Yeah.
That's where the owners, the Haddad family.
Yes. Yep.
You will. They're some of the most well-versed and excellent ground-up development people I've seen for retail.
Right.
With their gas station, with
the whole Tailgaters is the brand
theirs.
that has. Yep.
Well, you will see them behind the counter.
Yep.
And then you will see them carrying the trash out. These are sophisticated developers.
Right.
That's what a family business does. Is they'll do chief cook and bottle washer.
Right.
They'll do it all.
Right.
So that's what.
And I've heard that. Chris, I think is the Haddad is one of the folks I spoke with.
Yeah.
A while ago. Yeah. And my kids spent all kinds of hours and through their high school years. I mean, that Dunkin' Donuts on that corner in particular became the Starbucks.
That's right.
Of our generation. They'd go there and meet and do homework for 4 hours and get one paper written and dine and do their thing.
It's a good place. And that's going back to us. That's an example of what a family business is
right.
You said it well. There is no wheelhouse. There's what you're supposed to do. You get up and the wheelhouse is you get up and work.
right.
And do something.
So two redevelopment projects that excited me the most, clearly the Knapp Center. We call it the Knapp Center, right? The center, right?
Yeah.
So the Knapp Center is such an icon in this downtown stretch, and the after is absolutely beautiful, inside and out, and is such a gift to the city of Lansing. And then you had the was it Oliver Towers?
It was originally called Oliver Towers.
Right.
Now it's called Capitol View Apartments.
Capitol View Apartments, right. But there was a fire, and then it sat empty for 30 years or so. And so you have these empty buildings. And was the Knapp Center empty?
It was empty from, I believe it emptied out in the mid-'90s.
Yeah.
These were during the years where a number of my brothers and sisters had left Lansing, coming back not until like 2010, around there. But it sat empty for years and years. And I remember my dad, I'm going to use his voice again, he'd say, somebody's got to figure out how to redo this thing. Well, it was a team effort led by my brother Nick.
I thought it was. Yep.
Whose favorite thing to do was the redevelopment of old buildings. Very capital-intensive process.
Yep.
With layers upon layers upon layers of paperwork. Stack up all of your phone books and paperwork, and that's how. And it's an arduous process,
right?
And it's not one that's, in our experience, it's one that's worthwhile, but it's not worthwhile because of the boatloads of money you make. It's not that.
Right.
It is about service.
Yep.
It is about pouring your resources into a downtown, because if it were just for a profit and loss and revenue standpoint, there's no way you would do it. But if it's for something that makes sense, just at least in terms of it financially makes some bit of sense, and it makes sense, especially with the last 2 years that we've looked at, the things that make sense for a community where you pour your resources into it. Both of those things are things that we're proud of.
Right. And you should be. I mean, it's a real gift to the city of Lansing. There's no question, all of the work that you've done. So George passes in 2017. Now, you've got 5 brothers and sisters, right? 3 boys, 3 girls?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got 6 George F. Eyde kids, plus you rattled off the 5 or 6 brothers that George had. And I got to believe there's a cascading, family tree that comes off of each of those folks as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, that transition has been interesting because we're no longer, for 60 years, George and Lou comprised the Eyde Company.
Got it.
Mine and my family's company now, because now the Eyde Company still exists. It's the Lou Eyde family and his sons and daughters there.
Yep.
And now the George Eyde family is going to be, it has been rebranded. We are Eyde Development. And you may have seen some of the signs around town with the new E.
Yep.
And that's who we are.
So the old E still exists. I still see the old signs. I'm like, oh, they haven't gotten around to changing that yet. And then it dawned on me. I'm like, no, that's the Lou side.
That's Uncle
Lou. Right. Okay.
And my cousin's on that side, and they do a great job with their stuff. You'll see their stuff all around.
So we grew up with a family cottage. My dad had a couple of brothers, and then obviously they all have kids. And so when your father passed, after my initial sadness of such an icon, leaving our presence, then my brain started going to, that's going to be a monumental task of how do you scale this to another generation, right? You with the hundreds or thousands, I don't know how many assets you have between all of the family members all under one umbrella, the process of fairly changing the game without stepping on a lot of toes and hurting a lot of feelings and bad blood and things of that nature. I mean, and that's why we're having this conversation 5 years after your dad passed. So I'm curious as to how that all works.
What makes it easier? What makes it easier is there's what you had to sort out between those 2 companies, and then it's 6 brothers and sisters deciding what to do with it.
Right.
And we're there. It's a long process, but one thing that makes it easier, one thing that made it easier in the splitting between Eyde Company and Eyde Development, who we are now, is the fact that there was growth. When you're so busy trying to build new things and you're experiencing growth, that upward momentum did help with the process we have. It helps it helps to say, we're busy expanding or doing redevelopments and doing other things. I do not know if we had been going on a downward slope as a market. All we've done is add population and add opportunities. So that was helpful. The other thing that was helpful with my brothers and sisters, with the 6 people, is that you've got a group of people who were raised by my mom and dad, and so those fundamentals you have people who said, who were very clear, this is what I want to do and this is where we want to go, and that's why we're called Eyde Development now, and that's why we are who we are.
Right.
The process is slow. Everything's slow for me.
Right.
But the focus by my dad especially wasn't about what you have. It was about what you are doing and how much effort you're given. One thing he always said was, he said, I always got the feeling if I wasn't always trying to do something or accomplish something, that I was probably doing something wrong. He felt like he needed to be doing something. That's a common theme for all of my brothers and sisters. Right.
Yeah. No flies on any of you from what I can see. So now, my memory as a person just in the community that wasn't as closely affiliated, and engaging with you on a regular basis, is that you and your brother Matthew were probably the 2 of the 6 of George's children that made this a full-time gig for a longer period of time. Is that fair to say?
The Eyde Development, as it's comprised now, is myself, my brother Matt, and my sister Eve Marie.
Okay, wonderful lady all together too.
We will be going forward.
Got it.
And so, those are the 2 people I will be driving up the wall for the next 40 years.
40.
That's the. We'll last another 40.
No, absolutely.
We got wearables. We got wearable tech. We can do this all day long. Let's go.
People like you that just never stop. It's
never stop talking.
No, that's great. Okay, so you and Matthew and Eve Marie are the core of the Eyde development. You are the right. And so, is there a kind of an emotional downshift as to what types of things you're excited about doing moving forward, or is it? I mean, as the dust is settling from this whole restructuring, I don't know. There's a new brand. Is there a new posturing or a new outward, progression of your brand?
We're still in those three businesses.
Right. Yep.
Here's the thing that's changed. Well, COVID is the elephant in the room, is that we've had 2 years of that. And so of all this growth and development we had, maybe about, especially as office operators, we've seen people out of the office.
Right.
So we said maybe the some of the gains we've had over the previous decade, the two years have erased some of those or have had us relook at it. But here's the thing that everybody, and it hasn't been reported enough, we've grown, Greater Lansing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Has grown by almost 90,000 people between the 2010 and the 2020 censuses. That's crazy.
Yep.
And it's something that we're not talking about because the thing you see is, like, we're in downtown. We're waiting for 38,000 people to come back to work.
Right.
The focus was on, rightly or wrongly so, safety.
Yep.
And you can armchair quarterback that all you want. Some places focused on safety, and who could argue against that? Who could ever argue against safety? Some others argued for bravery. That's going to be, and that's a highly political charged, and it's just going to be.
Right.
But what we're looking at now is 40,000 people who are going to be very slow coming back to work in an empty downtown. That's all we see if we look at the negative side. If we look at the positive side, you said, oh my gosh, we've had tremendous growth.
Right.
Almost 90,000 people in 10 years. We haven't grown like that in 50.
Right.
And you can see it in the housing.
Yep. A lot of pressure on housing.
You can see it in the demand for industrial. Chris, I don't know if you know this, but we have 80,000 square feet in RFPs for new office space out right now.
Really?
And some of these new requests for office space, I have to ask them. I said, are you even in offices right now?
Right.
Asking for more space, but you can see the signs. One thing that's lucky in our business is all the different businesses we get to interact with.
Right.
We walk into someone else's office who happens to rent from us, and you can learn how to make a corned beef sandwich at a restaurant you go to. But then you can learn what these groups are doing. You can learn what's happening for a medical provider. You can learn what's happening for a law firm. You can learn what's happening for a restaurant, and it gives you a perspective on what the last 2 years were like. If you can quiet down and listen, which you know is hard for me to do.
Yep.
But you can learn so much.
Absolutely. So you're bullish then. You feel very good.
Very much so.
That's fantastic. That's good to hear, right? Because it is to go downtown and to see all of the vacant office buildings or see the lack of energy on the surface streets, right? And you wonder about the restaurants and the Costa checks and some of these places that just require the government and its supply chain and office workers to populate them. I mean, historically, Lansing had a problem. We would only have people here from 8 to 5. And then it was kind of a ghost town. Now that's changed a little bit because of that pent-up demand. There's a lot of energy to put housing downtown. Mm-hmm. And that housing that has been built downtown in the last 10, 15 years is wildly successful. I wouldn't say we have the opposite problem, but we have a better nights and weekends population than we had in the past. And now our work days are kind of struggling. So if we can get these people back to work, it seems like Lansing's greatest days are potentially ahead of us.
You know who fires me up are those groups. Like, I love what Downtown Lansing Inc. is doing.
Yep.
I love those human beings who are running around there and just generating energy.
Correct.
And helping these small businesses.
Yep.
But then the other thing is, I walked to one of the people who are like that. One of the actual business owners are like Sweet Encounters that they won a little contest.
Yep.
And then they started baking their stuff, and then they started running their classes. And what hit me like a ton of bricks is when I went down to the elevator, walked out, and I saw a line stretching out of the first floor retail area.
Yep.
And I heard children laughing in our building lobby, which I hadn't heard in 2 years.
Right.
And I think I drive the owner nuts. Nikki, I'm always trying to give her a hug, and she's like, "All right, thank you, thank you." I was like, "Thank you."
Nikki's been on the show. What a wonderful story that is.
And that's who's going to do it.
Yep.
And I'm sure there's a lot of who's going to help us through this. This is all of these last 2 years. They were, you could call them an unforced error, if you want to trace down the history of it. We have a bunch of unforced errors, or forced errors, whatever. Who's going to take us out of that? That's the type of person who's going to take us out of that.
Right.
The person who is up, creating something, not someone who's waiting for someone on high to fix things for them or to govern them in some way.
Yep.
That's the person who's going to take us out of that. And we are all that person.
Well, we all appreciate the contributions you made to allow her to get that up and running. You guys played a pretty significant role in her ability to open in that storefront, and we're grateful for that.
Thanks. I'm the one who's grateful.
Right on. Well, this is fantastic. I mean, we're up against the clock, if you can believe it. I could talk to you probably for 4 hours.
Well, no, I want to keep going. You're not going to let me keep going here? No, you're not.
No, well, as you can hear in the background, I got a group here waiting for us. But, the 3 generations, a generation ahead? What's the tagline?
Generations ahead.
Generations ahead. The Eyde Development, a new brand, a new attitude, same principles steeped in just doing the right thing by the communities they serve. We've had one of the principals of the Eyde Development, Mr. Nathaniel Eyde. Thanks so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me.